Welcome to GovCast, connecting with federal IT's top decision makers. I'm Alexander Bulova, production lead at GovCIO Media and Research. With me today is staff writer-researcher Catherine McPhail. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Alex.
So you had the opportunity to chat with Ann Duncan, the CIO at the Department of Energy. How was that conversation?
It was great. I mean, she has long been someone that I've really admired in the federal IT community. So I was actually so thrilled to sit down with her.
Why is 2023 a big year for energy?
Energy is in implementation season, as Ann Duncan will tell you. The bipartisan infrastructure law is going to be standing up 60 new DOE programs, and there are a lot of new investments. There's a lot of work to be done, and climate resilience and energy justice is going to play a major role in how that work unfolds.
What's the biggest takeaway from this episode? What should our listeners keep in mind?
I think Anne said it best, which is that the most important thing to do is to be thinking about climate change and climate resilience. It's not always top of mind, especially as we're chasing emerging technologies and massive modernization and security efforts, but it is important to have an eye towards this because it is an issue of national security and it is everyone's problem, and it's going to take all of us to solve it, and that includes the IT industry.
Thank you, Catherine. Let's take a listen to your conversation.
Today, we are talking about climate resilience. Climate resilience work is growing across the federal space, and it's also an important part of Energy's mission. It has also long been a part of your career, especially in one of your prior positions as the CIO for the EPA. So to start us off, I was wondering if you could tell us about your journey in this space and why sustainability and climate resilience is important to you.
Sure, Catherine. I think you really hit a key point here about my background at the EPA. I remember when I interviewed for the job at EPA, I was sitting with Gina McCarthy in her office, and she asked me why I wanted the job, and I said, because climate is the most pressing issue we have right now, and this was 2013, and we have made not enough progress since 2013 to reverse the course we're on in terms of significant climate change. So I think it's the existential threat and crisis for our generation, for our time. And we really need to be very focused on resolving this issue. It's unfortunate that it has become a political issue because it's really an issue of whether life on this planet gets significantly harder for people going forward.
You're absolutely right. And I know we're seeing more energy around it today. We wish we'd seen more in the past, but there is a lot of important work happening, especially at the Department of Energy. And the DOE, in fact, has a very far-flung mission, including a lot of things that people might not always expect. So before we dive in further, could you give us some background in what it is that the department does?
So thanks for that question, Catherine. I think that the mission is broader than anyone can possibly imagine if they've never really dug into it. It certainly surprised me how broad DOE's mission was. We start all the way from our nuclear mission, which includes nuclear nonproliferation. It includes managing the nuclear stockpile and ensuring that we have an operational system. And that means doing things like building new nuclear warheads. And in that same vein, we're still cleaning up for the Manhattan Project. We've made incredible progress, cleaned up over 100 sites from the Manhattan Project, but we still have some to go. You go from there, the sort of almost the opposite end of the spectrum of our mission is that we manage the power grid for much of the country. We sell power that is generated primarily by the network of Western dams, but also on the East Coast as well. And we sell that power and we manage the power grid in 38 states as part of that process. So we're really fundamentally important to managing the power grid and also to working with the private sector, energy sector, both in electricity and oil and natural gas as the critical infrastructure authority for that section of critical infrastructure. And finally, the thing that people probably know DOE for the most, which are our national labs. So we have 17 national labs doing research in virtually anything you can imagine. And those labs are spread across the country, are part of different parts of the DOE mission, and really are the engine of innovation for the United States and to a great extent for the world.
Those labs do such exciting work. I know we've covered geospatial modeling, decarbonization pathway modeling, and all sorts of things that are also really important to this effort of addressing the effects of climate change. And that's also very important to the Biden administration, which has set out some very ambitious goals. The federal sustainability plans at the target to achieve a carbon pollution-free electricity sector by 2035 and net zero emissions economy-wide by no later than 2050. What is the Department of Energy's role in seeing those goals to fruition?
Catherine, that's a great question. And I probably can't cover the breadth of everything that DOE does, but I will share a few things that we're doing across that space. Certainly, it's a huge part of our mission to develop and research and develop next generation energy technologies. And we want to secure the energy grid from all hazards in the process, including everything from hurricanes to cyber attacks. So we need that clean energy grid, and we need it to be secure. So several things we're doing specifically within the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a big investment in clean energy. DOE has $35 billion in terms of direct funding, $350 billion in loan authority. So we've already invested over $1.5 billion of that. And we're continuing to put grants and loans out there every day, as we refer to it at DOE right now. This is implementation season. And as implementation season, we are mobilizing those resources. We have worked on critical infrastructure research at our labs. We are working on marshaling resources for heat pump manufacturing as part of the Defense Production Act. We've allocated $9 billion to states and tribes to support home energy rebates so they can put clean energy on homes and tribal lands. And we created the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program for loans to retool, repower, repurpose, and replace energy infrastructure with low carbon emission infrastructure. Under the CHIPS and Science Act, which was signed by President Biden in July, there's $67 billion for DOE. And that includes $50 billion for the Office of Science, which enables cutting-edge research and development in clean energy and advanced computing and manufacturing. That also helps us invest, and that law helps us invest in our national lab infrastructure and establish the Foundation for Energy Security and Innovation, which will help us deepen our partnerships with universities and the private sector as we look to deploy new energy technologies for the future. We also implemented bipartisan infrastructure law. So we're 1 year into that law. And in that process, we've launched the Clean Energy Corps to bring thousands of new staff into DOE. The target, I believe, is 2,000. And we've launched the Building a Better Grid initiative to catalyze the upgrading of our energy grid and transmission lines across the country, because that continues to be a weak point. We have recently we approved the last of 50 plans for the states, plus DC and Puerto Rico for EV charging. So there is now a plan for EV charging for every state, DC and Puerto Rico. And then we are going to fund $5 billion from the bipartisan infrastructure law into building that EV charging network around the country. We've also opened applications for a $7 billion program to create regional clean hydrogen energy hubs. And we've put out $2.8 billion in battery manufacturing grants to reshore battery manufacturing, because obviously we need to develop that domestic supply chain for EVs and grid storage, because we do not have, and there are many examples, but this is one, we do not have the manufacturing infrastructure in this country that we need to move forward. And then finally, I'll mention that the Diablo Canyon Power Plant in California received the first round of funding from the Civil Nuclear Credit Program. This is designed to help keep our operating nuclear power plants open Unfortunately, we've not invested in nuclear power in this country or in the world the way we probably should have. If we had continued on the trajectory we were in the 70s, we would not be in the situation we are now. But we scared ourselves off of nuclear power, and it's unfortunate because the safety record of nuclear power is incredibly high. It's much better than any other power safety record that we can imagine. And so we need to make sure that our clean energy strategy is an all of the above strategy, including nuclear energy and keeping those power plants going.
Wow, you can really see how expansive this work is. You mentioned a lot of new funding, and I know that DOE is a part of Biden's Justice 40 initiative, which says that 40% of federal investments should flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. So how does climate justice and the Justice 40 initiative fit into this work at DOE?
So climate justice and Justice 40 are incredibly important initiatives to us at DOE. Back when I was at EPA, we worked on environmental justice there. We were a much smaller group of people working on it, and this administration has really increased the emphasis on Justice 40. So as you said, Justice 40 means 40% of the benefits of any of these programs go to underserved and overburdened communities to ensure that we are doing things that are helping those communities and not harming them. There are examples in the past of efforts to decarbonize that have actually impacted those communities even more negatively around the country. So we don't want to do that again. In fact, we want to help those communities. So at DOE, we have a number of activities that we're doing. I mean, the most important one, when you get right down to it, is that we are tracking and monitoring our grants to ensure that we comply with those requirements, that we do 40% or better for those communities to ensure that their needs are met. We're also working with CEQ at the White House to help develop their Justice 40 applications from my office. So when you get down to the brass tacks of what we're doing in the Office of CIO, we're actually partnering with them to develop applications to support them in that process. We've also developed a conversational AI application to assist with the intake of small business capability statements within our Office of Small and Disadvantaged Businesses, because that's one of the target places where we know we're going to be able to support those efforts. And we've also built a small business search tool to help folks match opportunities. So we can get those small businesses in, we can get historically black colleges and universities in, minority serving institutions, things like that we can get them in, get them active with our solutions. DOE's hosted a Justice Week this past year as our first ever Justice Week, where we had 4,000 external and internal stakeholders discussing DOE's justice and equity efforts, engaging them, making sure they understand how they can be involved in a new energy future for the United States that's a clean energy future. And again, we've built the dashboards, the tools to make sure we can track and monitor, make sure we're meeting our commitments.
That's great to hear. And it's great to hear about how, the data is tracking this and dashboarding. You've spoken about the importance of climate justice before, and I'm wondering if you can tell us why this work is so vital.
Well, I think that so climate justice, to be clear, it's not sort of my wheelhouse in the sense of it's not the responsibility of my department. But then again, we've talked a lot of things that aren't particularly the OCIO's responsibility. But climate justice is important in the sense of we want to create. So one of the tenets of this administration is that it's important to create an environment that is fair. It's a priority of the secretary to create an environment that's fair. The point of energy justice is simply we cannot continue, and we should not continue, to overburden and disadvantage certain communities. And so the point of energy justice is to be equitable and not equal. And I think we've all seen the picture by now of equal, where they put two boxes behind a fence, and the tall kid can see over and the short kid can't. And then equitable, you put two boxes, one's bigger and one's smaller, and everybody gets to see over the fence. And it's the same idea, is that we need to look at what equity is, and we need to care for our communities that need a little bit more of a hand up in order to have the same opportunities as everybody else. And so that's a priority of the secretary, that's a priority of the president, it's certainly a priority of all the leadership in DOE, is to ensure that we level the playing field of opportunity. And this is one of the ways we can do that.
We're going to take a break from today's interview and play a game I call Archive Deep Dive, where I challenge our hosts to identify a previous guest on our podcast. Playing today are Editor-in-Chief Amy Kluber and Staff Writer-Researcher Catherine McPhail. Hi, Amy. Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Hi, Alex.
Here are the rules. I will play a clip, and if you know the speaker, buzz in using a buzzword. Today's buzzword is agile. If you get it wrong, the other player gets a chance to guess. If neither of you get the answer, I open the floor to random guessing until somebody gets it right, or I give up and tell you. And as a quick editor's note, yes, I am editing down the response time. Otherwise, you would be listening to a lot of silence and not a lot of game. Thank you. There are 3 clips today. Are you ready?
Oh man. Agile is like the buzzword of the entire industry.
Here is your first clip.
If you think about the VA, one, you think about the scale of the organization. We're talking about the largest integrated healthcare provider in the United States. It's the largest benefits company as well. And so those two things together just create a massive opportunity to deliver services that are critically needed by veterans, but also have that opportunity to give back.
Gonna go out on a limb and say it's the VA.
The voice is so familiar. Is it Ryan Vega at VA?
Ooh, I'm sorry. It is not Ryan Vega. Catherine, who do you think it is?
The recent interview with the Undersecretary for Health.
No, that is incorrect. All right, I'm going to give you a hint. This speaker appeared at our Cyberscape Zero Trust event.
Is that Kurt Delbenny?
We have a winner. That is Kurt Delbenny, Assistant Secretary for Information and Technology, CIO, VA. Good job, Amy.
His voice sounds so different when you can't see his face.
All right. Clip number 2.
My service in the Army is one of the many experiences that I've had that I think prepared me well for this role. I would say that each of my prior experiences have provided me with some tools and with some perspective that helped me serve our veterans.
Don Remy at VA.
Yes.
Wow. That was
Very
so
good.
impressive.
Actually,
Yes.
that was maybe one of my favorite interviews.
Why was it your favorite?
Well, that was like one of our only video podcasts. So we not only did the podcast, but then we were able to put out some video clips on social media ahead of Veterans Day, actually.
Oh, that's very fun.
Yep. So that was Donald Remy, Deputy Secretary at the VA. All right. Time for our last guest. And I have a feeling you both will know this person.
And for me, I'm really motivated by serving a cause greater than myself. And that's really what has kept me devoted to this particular mission and this agency as well.
That's a great clip, but I'm a little bit stumped. Let me think.
Man, who is that?
See, the trick is it could be anyone because all public servants are devoted to their mission. But who is it?
So every public servant is devoted to their mission, but this public servant is specifically dedicated to human-centered design.
Oh, is it, was that Michelle Hoko?
It is not. Catherine, do you have a guess?
Is it Meg Glick from the Department of Education?
No, it's not Meg Glick. All right, your other hint. She has appeared on a lot of virtual event panels.
It's Krista Kennard.
No.
What?
You were so confident in that one. A lot of virtual panels, like our virtual panels?
Our virtual panels, yeah.
I'm like trying to picture the voice with the face.
So
Barbara
all of
Morton?
these are... It is Barbara Morton.
Woohoo!
All right, Amy with the clean sweep of our archive deep dive for our GovCasts. Thank you both for playing. And now back to the episode.
I know too that climate change, climate resilience work, data is driving a lot of that. And it is also a very important part of thinking about how we're modernizing our systems. So speaking to our audience of federal IT professionals in the public and private sector, I'm wondering what future changes you might hope to see in the industry in order for it to become more sustainable and resilient, whether that's greenhouse gas emissions, supply chain analysis, what you hope data centers are going to look like, cryptocurrency, or any of those things.
Yeah, I can bring up a few examples of ways we think that the industry can become more green. First of all, data centers themselves, there are great opportunities. In many cases, it doesn't really matter where your data center is within some reason. And in fact, other than the fact that you want some geographic diversity among your data centers. So we can be smarter about where we put data centers across the industry to take advantage of climates that are going to require less heating and cooling. So we have places where we have data centers where we can use airside economizers, which basically means bring in cool air from the outside, whether that's all day or in the evening, but climates that aren't necessarily particularly cold, right? So these temperate climates where you can have a data center and you don't have to use a lot of heating and air conditioning resources to manage those computers in that data center. We can also continue to take advantage of capabilities like virtualization, like optimizing our solutions, only using the processing power we need when we need it and spinning up more capability when we need it. That actually are some of the benefits of going to cloud service providers, is because they have that scale and they're able to manage workloads and balance workloads and also place a data center in a location where you might not be able to because you don't have those resources. And so those are the kind of questions people need to be asking their service providers when they put data centers in place, put capabilities in place at data centers is, what is it that you're doing? How are you managing your data center? Are you being economical with your data center? We also have a variety of tools to monitor and make data centers more efficient. Some of those were actually created for capabilities for ourselves and anyone who wants to use them at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So you can go out and get those tools from the lab and use those to increase the efficiency in your data centers. So data centers are a big thing because there's lots of data centers and more computing power every day, and that's not going to change. Some other things, cryptocurrency and the blockchain are a huge issue for the use of computing power and consequently the use of energy. We've seen one cryptocurrency radically change its operating model so that it uses much, much less energy. And so I think we really need to evaluate the cryptocurrency field and understand how to reduce those costs. And there obviously are ways to do that. We've seen it done. And, the difference between proof of work and proof of stake is pretty significant. And being able to make some decisions about how you're going to want to do that to make things less computationally intensive, because we're not getting rid of Bitcoin. We're not getting rid of the blockchain, but how do we make that less computationally intensive? And I think the other thing, which I mentioned when we talked about batteries, is the supply chain. There are national security risks associated with our current supply chain, but there are also costs. I had thought, 25 years ago, I said, well, the supply chain's coming back eventually, because eventually you're going to run out of places that are cheap to do business, or so much cheaper that it makes sense to do all that shipping. I think we've chosen other reasons why we're bringing supply chains back. I think, as I said, national security issues about who's manufacturing things. Also, our experience during COVID of recognizing how easy it is to disrupt a just-in-time supply chain or simply a long supply chain. So we're going to see semiconductor manufacturing coming back to the U.S., I hope. We're going to see some assembly. I think we'll see the machine-intensive businesses coming back first. That's fairly obvious as to why. But there are other industries. This is not an IT thing, but machine tools. We have a serious issue with machine tool capability in the United States. So from a national security standpoint, as well as a reduction in energy, we need to be bringing these capabilities back to the United States. And then obviously the thing I haven't mentioned, which is sort of a slam dunk, is when you are powering data centers, when you are doing things like cryptocurrency mining, that we're using clean energy to do those. We have the ability to use any number of clean energies that have gotten, they're getting cost competitive with less clean energies. And we're seeing the ability coming on the horizon for even more cost-effective, more new and exciting clean energy opportunities. So we need to be asking our suppliers, where are you getting the energy from? What kind of energy are you using? Can you convert to a clean energy, a zero carbon energy to do this work? So those are some of the key things that we look at that I think we want to see in the future. And there's a lot of other things, obviously, out there that we can hit in the future.
Speaking of the future, it is the new year. And so I wanted to ask you, what are you most looking forward to in 2023?
In 2023, what am I most looking forward to? I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's implementation season. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on at DOE. At the end of last year, we made a major breakthrough in fusion energy, creating a reaction that generated more energy than it took. And so that's exciting to see this year how that goes. But we have lots of exciting things on the horizon at DOE. We're getting the folks together internally to talk about what we're doing in cybersecurity and our new research innovations in that space. We have our DOE Cybersecurity and Technology Innovation Conference coming up in the spring, and we're just looking forward to seeing how we can help the rest of DOE build our clean energy future.
Great. Well, Anne, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Is there anything else that you would like to add or anything that you would like the federal IT industry to think about when it comes to IT and climate resilience?
I think that the most important thing to do is to think about climate resilience. I think it's very easy to get focused on the next big feature, the next new exciting thing. But the important thing is to be thinking about how everything we do can be more resilient, whether that's as a service provider, whether it's as a manufacturer or a customer, or when we go home at night. How can we use less polluting energy, use more clean energy, and overall use less energy? Because obviously the easiest thing to do, just like in the world of recycling, is to reduce. So where can we reduce our energy consumption? That's always the first thing we want to do. Then how can we use cleaner energy? How can we be more efficient in that use of clean energy?
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Anne. It's been great to have you.
Hey, thank you. It's been a pleasure, Catherine.
That was a really fascinating conversation, Catherine. Are there any last thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just to keep having this conversation and really get people on board, because the time has come to build a greener economy and a greener government.
Definitely. And if our listeners want to continue the conversation, we actually just published a new Gov Focus, which is data modeling strategies in federal climate resilience efforts. It features speakers from the Department of Energy, Kyle Pfeiffer and Peter E. Thornton. So if you're interested in hearing more about climate resilience, you can go to our website, govciomedia.com, to watch that Gov Focus. Catherine, thank you for joining me today. Tune in 2 weeks for a brand new GovCast. Until then, I'm Alexander Bolova.
I'm Catherine McPhail.
Thank you for listening. GovCast, along with HealthCast and CyberCast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com. Watch out for new episodes released every Tuesday and Wednesday across our shows. You can follow all of them on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, make sure to let us know by leaving a review. And if you have any topics you think we should look into, contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.